The woman serving a life sentence for killing music icon Selena is getting a chance at freedom. Yolanda Saldívar fatally shot the Mexican-American singer at a Corpus Christi motel back in 1995. At the time, Saldívar was the president of Selena's fan club, but prosecutors say she was also embezzling money from the Grammy Award-winning artist. She has served 30 years of her life sentence, but she is now eligible for parole for the first time and is asking to be released, claiming there is a bounty on her head. Selena, in the meantime, has become a cultural icon for breaking barriers for women and Latin artists in American pop music. Just 23 years old when she was killed, her ability to captivate the global stage left an indelible legacy. So I'd like to welcome in legal analyst and trial attorney Misty Marris to talk about this chance at parole. Misty, the parole hearing is set for March. What is that likely to look like?
So in advance of the parole hearing, Nichole, there's actually a lot of work that is done because the parole board makes a determination about whether or not a convicted person will actually be granted parole once they're eligible. So in this case, Saldívar was eligible for parole after 30 years of serving time. Now, what's happening in the background is the parole board is actually compiling information. They're looking for letters in support of her, letters in protest of her release, looking at her record behind bars, and also conducting an interview of her. All of that is going to go into a report that will be presented to the parole board. And then they're going to look at various factors. For instance, is this individual a threat if they were to be released? What was their behavior like while they were behind bars? So those are all of the factors that are going to be taken into consideration when they ultimately vote on whether or not she will be granted parole.
You know, and Missy, during her trial, Saldívar alleged that her gun discharged accidentally, but she, of course, was ultimately found guilty of murder. Could her past claims of it being a mistake, of it being an accident, could that come back to haunt her?
So, Nichole, you make a great point, because part of this is that she actually did an interview from behind bars, and she spoke about revealing the truth, and that being the defense that she had laid out during her time of trial, that was an accidental discharge of the gun. And, she's appealed the results of her conviction multiple times, and she has not been successful. But any of those statements that were made in the public sphere can certainly come back around. But something that the parole board does consider is the severity of the crime and whether or not the time that's been served is proportional to the crime that was committed. And so in this case, she was found guilty of first-degree murder. The fact that she has another story about the accidental discharge, from the legal perspective, the guilty verdict was for an intentional murder. So that's what is going to go into the parole board's analysis.
You know, and Misty, as we were leading into this, we talked about these reports that Saldívar is, a constant target among her fellow inmates, that she is receiving death threats. Is that at all taken into consideration by the parole board?
So what she's laying the foundation for is that it's actually not safe for her to continue in the way that she is in her incarceration, because she is being targeted due to the outrageous and overwhelming popularity of Selena, and especially now, Nichole, because there's been these documentaries that are very recent. There's a whole new level of interest in this case at this time that's being fostered even more so. Selena's been an icon for so long. Look, the parole board is going to take that into consideration. They're going to weigh that against the potential threat to public safety, and knowing that if she is to be released, that there will be conditions to that. She will be on probation. There'll be limitations. She'll be supervised. That being said, it's important to note, in Texas, it's about a 34% success rate for those who are eligible for parole. So the odds are really against her. In addition to that, if she's denied this time, the parole board can set another date between 1 and 4 years. So there'll be another opportunity in the future. But really, in this particular case, given the severity and the nature of the crime, regardless of her, obviously her side of the story, it's unlikely to be successful on this time around.
Oh, well, that's what I wanted to ask you. I mean, 34%, so it's about 1 in 3 granted parole. Do you think she's likely then to be granted parole? And if based on the statistics, if she is not, how could that impact her next attempt if they already see she was denied at least once before?
So, and the next attempt, so say hypothetically she's denied, which is the likely outcome in this particular case, especially since we know there's going to be a lot of protest from Selena's family about her release, which is a factor that the parole board takes into consideration. We'll also learn from that parole hearing about any other issues. Were there programs that she was required to complete while she was behind bars? Did she do them? How was her behavior? Those issues will also be something that will be explored at that parole hearing. So if she's denied this time around, the parole board can set a new date. And as I said before, it's a wide range. They can look at it again in a year. They can look at it again in a few years down the road. At that point, there could be some feedback, meaning you have to complete this, you have to do this, that may increase her odds at the time of the next parole board hearing.
All right, we will see what happens. Misty Marris, thank you as always.
Thank you.